Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you can't also be powerful. Join award-winning authors, activists, and confirmed introverts Lisa Hurley and Sharon Hurley Hall as they explore introversion, workplace culture, self-care, and much more. Each episode of the Introvert Sisters Live, which is the evolution of their original Anthem Award-winning podcast, blends thoughtful conversation, insightful analysis, and practical strategies through an intersectional lens. Created especially for those quiet souls who are so often overlooked and underestimated, the Introvert Sisters Live provides a serene space where neurodivergence is normalized, nuance is celebrated, depth is welcome, and introversion is honored as a strength. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Introvert Sisters Live podcast. And today we are tackling a topic, of course, dear to our hearts, and one that also has sparked a lot of curiosity, a lot of conversation, and for us personally, a lot of self-discovery. And so today's title is Naming Neurodivergence, Introversion, Autism, and the Spectrum. And we're going to talk about all of that. Now, since those of you who've been following this new version of the show know that our very first episode of this season was entirely devoted to defining introversion. So we're going to ask you to do a little bit of homework and go back, listen to episode one, and you'll get all the definitions of introversion, and we go into it in depth. At the most basic level, introversion is a personality trait and a personality difference. That's what it is. But for this episode, we're going to focus on autism and neurodivergence in general. Quick disclaimer. We want to note, of course, neither of us is a clinician. So yes, we have done some research, but the conversation is based mainly on our lived experience and our personal reflections. So if you have questions that require a medical professional, please seek a medical professional. But what we're hoping is that this conversation can at least be a starter for you, a starting point for you if you are interested in the topic of neurodivergence, if you think you might be neurodivergent or autistic in some way. So that's where we're coming from. Right, sis?
Yes, absolutely. And welcome, everybody. So let us dive right in by talking a little bit about neurodivergence. And we're going to have, I'm going to cover two things here. Let's go with what everybody normally uses as their definition, right? Neurodivergence is a term that refers to brains that function differently from what society considers neurologically typical or neurotypical. Mm-hmm. In quotes. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, the DSM-5, which is the standard classification used by mental health and medical professionals in the US and around the world to diagnose, recognize mental illnesses. There is no diagnosis for neurodivergence as per se, but there are specific brain differences called neurodevelopmental disorders that fall under the umbrella of neurodivergence. Having one or more of those means that one is neurodivergent. I would like to just say that we take exception to stigmatizing any brain type. I mean, is something really a disorder or divergent if it affects around 15 to 20% of the population? Or is it simply another wonderful expression of our diverse humanity? But anyway, these are the terms we have, so we're going to work with them for the time being with that disclaimer noted. So sis, Lisa, what does neurodivergence mean to you personally?
For me, and I know we're going to get into this, in more detail a bit later, but for me, it's provided answers to so many questions I have had about myself in the past, about feeling different, feeling quote unquote divergent, feeling different from the norm. And so neurodivergence for me is an explanation of self and it's also tied into an acceptance of self. So we will get into all of the differences that you and I have personally both experienced or noticed in each other. But that's what it means to me. It means just being, being and feeling. I think that's important as well. Feeling a little different from quote unquote the norm, or realizing that you say things differently, you feel things differently, you do things differently. Right?
Yes, yes,
What about
yes.
you? What's it mean to you?
Well, similarly to you, sis, it is about increased self-awareness.
Hmm.
It is about certain things that were always there suddenly making sense.
Right.
It is about having a framework and language to
Mhm.
understand and talk about your particular personality and neurotype, similar to having the language of introversion, really.
Right, right.
And so the thing about neurodivergence, of course, is that it it is an umbrella term for all kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
So we can, you can get 10 neurodivergent people in a room, and all 10 could have something completely different that presents as what is normal for them.
Hmm.
Autism, ADHD, dyslexia,
Yes.
dyscalculia, Tourette syndrome, other neurological differences,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to also be very careful, I think, not to make assumptions
Mm-hmm.
about what is meant by that umbrella term, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so how did learning about neurodivergence in general, how did it change the way that you understand yourself? I mean, well, did it, first of all, did it change the way you understand yourself? And if so, then how?
For me, it was very similar to the introversion piece
Hmm.
in giving me a language to understand that certain types of behavior that I had were absolutely normal for someone who was neurodivergent in the way that I am neurodivergent.
Hmm.
And we'll get more into those.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that.
We'll get into those. But one of the things we definitely want to stress is that difference does not equal deficiency, right, sis?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Right?
Difference is not equal deficiency. Um, One can have a neurodivergent brain or neurodivergent diagnosis without being quote unquote deficient in any way. I believe that for me, my yes, there are challenges that come along with having a neurodivergent brain, but my neurodivergent brain is also what makes me great at the things that which I'm great, right? And we
Yes, I
want to also,
agree.
right, exactly. Like I know some people don't like when we say, oh, neurodivergence is a superpower, because of course there are struggles that come along with it. But for
Of
me
course.
personally, I am speaking for myself, not for
Mhm.
everybody else. There are definitely aspects of my neurodivergence that I feel provide me with superpowers for sure. We'll definitely get more and more into that. Another thing we want to make sure to reiterate is that neurodivergence, as the umbrella term, neurodivergence itself is not a diagnosis. Neurodivergence
Mhm.
is a framework, an umbrella term under which specific diagnoses fall. Like you said, Sharon, autism, ADHD, dyscalculia, dyslexia, and so on. Right?
Yes, yes.
And so now let's dive into autism. Um,
Let's.
let's dive because yeah, we've mentioned this very briefly before, but both of us are autistic, and so that's one of the reasons why this is a topic dear to us. And we have been hearing more and more discussions about it, and we think it's something that needs to be discussed. Okay, so according to the American Psychiatric Association and the CDC, autism is a neurodevelopmental condition characterized by differences in social communication, social interaction, sensory processing, patterns of interest, patterns of behavior. And so that's what autism is at a high level. And I want to stress that neurodevelopmental means that you are born with it. So one
Yes.
does not quote unquote catch autism
No.
or any
One
other,
one
right?
does not. One
You are,
does
you
not.
are born with it. Now it's you may it may or may not be observed that you have it, but whether or not it is observed, doesn't mean
Born
that
with
you
it.
don't have it, because you are born with it. So if the autism tree falls in the forest, it's still an autism tree that falls in the forest, right?
Oh, I am here, in the back of my head, I'm hearing Alison Hines playing Born with It, Born with
Born with it, right?
It. Right?
And
Yes.
when I
And I
actually
think,
that song really does tie in, because when I think, about our family, I definitely think, it could be
mm,
that my great grandmother passed it down, my grandmother passed it down, my daddy gave it to my mommy, and mommy gave it to me, because we was
Born with It.
born with it. Anyhow, so people
Anyway,
often hear the phrase on the spectrum, or use the phrase on the spectrum. Can you tell the people, Sharon, tell our viewers and
absolutely.
listeners what does on the spectrum mean?
Okay, so going back to this DSM-5,
Mm-hmm.
right? Autism is called autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, disorder. And there are three levels comprising the spectrum, even though we take issue with it being labeled as a disorder.
Mm-hmm.
You may hear us both say that more than once.
Exactly.
Right. So there's the three levels into level one, requiring support, often referred to historically as high functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome, which is now a deprecated term. I believe the guy for whom it was named had ties with the Nazis, but don't quote me on that. Some of us now
Me too.
call this high masking, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Literally says we're having too much fun.
Are we?
Yes, it must be the Alex and Heinz piece.
Oh
Level
my
two,
God.
requiring substantial support. Individuals at this level face moderate but noticeable challenges, often require substantial support and accommodations to function in daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And then level three, requiring very substantial support, experiencing profound challenges that severely impact their ability to communicate and function independently, sometimes also referred to as low masking. But
Mm-hmm.
let's be clear. The medicalization of everything has resulted in ableist terminology. We actually prefer the social model of disability, which proposes that autism is not inherently disabling. Instead, autistic individuals are disabled by society, a society built exclusively for neurotypical people. So that
Yes.
shifts the focus from curing the individual to
Mm-hmm.
removing physical communication and attitudinal barriers. That definitely sits better with me,
Yeah, for me,
you know?
for me too.
Yeah.
And that certainly has been my experience. Again, we're definitely going to delve into this more, but because I was diagnosed with quote unquote level one um,
Hmm.
autism, aka high masking. Sometimes high masking is also called low support, but let me tell y'all, low support is a myth. Low support is a myth. Okay, because a lot of us are out here thugging it out because part of the vernacular, we are thugging it out because we have no choice, because as Sharon explained, we're in a society and in a system that is built for neurotypical people, and so we are often denied support because of the system, the
Yes.
environment itself is disabling. The condition is not necessarily, again, I am
Hmm.
speaking for myself. Let me be clear
Yeah.
here. For me, the condition itself is not inherently disabling, but although it is a disability, but it is not necessarily always disabling to me. But
Hmm.
the environment, child, the environment, the society not having support, that is what disables one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is why taking the social model approach is
Mhm.
so important because
Mhm.
it names the thing that is actually wrong that needs
Yeah.
to be fixed, which is not the person,
Yeah.
it is the infrastructure often. It is the
Yes.
infrastructure. Right. So what is one thing people misunderstand about autism being a spectrum, sis?
I think that people hear, the autism spectrum, and they think of it as a straight line, and there's, the three levels that you mentioned. Either a straight line horizontally or a straight line vertically, like a hierarchy almost, which is weird, right? And people fall at one of three stop points along that, but it is a spectrum, and it is so-called a sliding scale. And so it is not like for someone like me who is diagnosed level 1, it does not mean that I don't sometimes have greater needs. It does not mean that sometimes I don't need more support. Spectrum does not mean mild versus severe, right? It literally is just multiple infinite levels and points along the three levels.
And yes, I want to bring in a couple of comments from Dr. Joe here. Welcome. The definitions are also changing and shifting on what seems like a daily basis. The DSM/APA definitions you're reading out are being challenged. And then Dr. Joe also says, I also prefer the social difference frame and less pathologizing approach. The disorder, hate the disorder framing. Yes, we're definitely with you on that.
Same. So yeah, what about you? What do you think?
I think it's important to know that autism presents very differently in different people. As you said, support needs vary, strengths vary. Women and people of color are often overlooked, right? Generally get, later diagnosis, and, often behavior is pathologized in a way that does not lead to diagnosis and people getting the support that they need. So I think, I think it's important to recognize that we're all different. All of these things present differently and can do in all of us. And you're not just stuck at a point.
Like there's overlap. There's overlap between the levels.
Overlap. Absolutely.
And there's also fluctuation depending on capacity, environment, and so on.
Absolutely.
Fluctuation, not only from day to day, from hour to hour, quite frankly.
Yes, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So let us talk now a little bit, because we've defined our terms and we've pointed out, I hope, where some of the terminology does not fit well with us and some of the alternatives that we have. So let's talk about why this conversation is so personal for both of us. So I'm going to hand over to you, sis.
So, obviously the show is the Introvert Sisters. We're both introverts, right? So that much is clear. But in addition to us both being introverts, both of us identify as autistic women. I have also been diagnosed with ADHD and a plethora. I won't give you all I won't violate my own HIPAA right now. a plethora of diagnoses, but let's stick for right now to autism and, in my case, ADHD. Now, Sharon, and you can speak to this more if you want to later, but Sharon has you've chosen not to pursue a formal diagnosis, but you definitely have realized through reflection, conversations you and I have had, learning from other autistic voices, that you are in fact autistic. So you are self-diagnosed, as I was actually for a couple of years before I got a formal diagnosis. But I will tell you, and I think you and I share this experience, that every single time I go online and take one of these tests, because even with a formal diagnosis, I'm addicted to these tests, I have to confess. Right? maybe it's a special interest, I don't know. But every single time I take one of these tests, I score off the charts. Whether
absolutely. Autism, me too.
Introversion, ADHD, all of them, And so whether I think that there is value in both self-diagnosis and official formal diagnosis. And there are different reasons for each.
For sure.
But also our journeys have been different. I think what is similar for both of us is it's led us to a place of self-understanding, understanding of each other, self-acceptance, acceptance of each other, which I don't think was lacking, to be fair.
No, it wasn't really.
No, it wasn't. It was always there, but I think the acceptance may have grown even more. It was always there. It has grown because now we've realized, this is what Lisa was struggling
There's
with. Oh,
a
this is what Sharon was
there's
struggling
another lens.
with. There's
There's
another,
another lens for us to
yeah,
understand each other.
yeah,
And I think it's important to say, sis, that we are not speaking for all autistic people, all
hmm,
introverts, all neurodivergent people. All these communities are incredibly, incredibly diverse. So
yes,
we are sharing our lived experiences, our perspectives, and you know, our reflections in the
yeah,
hope that they help people feel a little less alone. And
yes,
really, the conversation is not about the labels.
hmm,
It's about understanding what happens when you finally have a language to name and frame experiences that might have left you confused, frustrated, or isolated. And sometimes that brings relief, sometimes it brings grief, sometimes it brings both.
hmm,
So
or
before we
anger,
go on, I just anger too.
yeah,
Right. Dr. Joe is looking for graphics which are on a continuum, but when you find them, feel free to share.
please.
I have a feeling we'll be coming back to this topic.
Yes, yes, and Dr. Joby will absolutely share them in the show notes as a resource for people, because again,
Yeah.
Sharon, and thank you so much for being here for this episode in particular. You've attended many, Dr. Joe, but thank you so much for being here for this, because it really helps to have someone like you with your qualifications in the room, in the chat, in the conversation with us, to lend your perspective as a medical professional. So thank you again for being here and supporting this conversation. And I
Okay,
want to
so
say, Sharon, I want to say
yeah.
just something about us realizing things about each other. I was thinking the other day about, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember growing up, anytime, not anytime, but many times we were watching TV, you would always say, why is it so loud? It's so loud. It's so loud. Why do you all have it so loud? And I couldn't understand it, because it was, quote unquote, it wasn't hurting my ears. It clearly was hurting yours.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, we would turn it down. We didn't want it to be uncomfortable. But I remember being very puzzled. Of course, we were both children. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
I was maybe in my early teens, if that, right?
Yeah.
I just remember feeling very confused and wondering, oh, is there something different about Sharon's ears? I didn't know, we didn't know about sensory differences and overstimulation and all of that. We had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember your ears being hypersensitive. What I now know is
Still
hypersensitive,
are.
right? But it finally, you started earlier. It finally caught up with me. And now, girl, I tell people, I hear electricity. Like
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
those are things
The-
that we
the-
realized.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so we've just been talking about the fact that this is not a theoretical conversation for us. So, Lisa, when did you first start wondering whether introversion alone
Mhm.
explained your experience of the world?
I think it's because I continued to feel like I was struggling. I read the book Quiet by Susan Cain several years ago, and obviously several years before I self-diagnosed and was later formally diagnosed. But I read the
Mhm.
book Quiet. That led me to learn about introversion, and I felt, oh, this explains everything, I thought at the time, except that I continued to struggle. And I was, oh my gosh, and I was struggling hard. I was really, I was the chief driver of the struggle bus, right? And so I kept digging and investigating and questioning and wondering, there must be something else going on, because life should not
Mhm.
feel this hard, right? And so I just kept investigating, and finally I got the answer. And I've shared this story a couple of times in other places. I'll share it here now, where one day I was randomly on social media and came across a post, by a guy, white guy, middle aged, American, totally, if you look at us on paper, nothing in common, right? But he wrote a long post about his experience about being late diagnosed with autism. And as I read it, I actually started to cry, because I was like, oh, He is me, and I am
Yeah.
this is what has been going on, right? And so I first wondered whether introversion alone explained my experience because the struggle continued. And then I got confirmation that, okay, it definitely is
Mhm.
not only introversion when I read that post and realized
Right.
I 100% have to be autistic. And after I read that post, again, I went and did all the tests multiple times, scored off the charts for all of them. No matter, and
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
would try, I'm like, okay, well, maybe you were in a bad mood when you did it. Try it again. I don't know. Always scored off the charts. So yeah,
Oh my
that's a
gosh.
bit, sorry for me. So, but
Yeah.
for you, sis, like when you look back now, what seems obvious? What signs seem obvious now that you could not see, back in the day before we have all this knowledge that we have now?
Well, actually, as I lead into that, I'm going to answer Dr. Doe's question about how the cinema was for me. The cinema was always super loud, but I kind of expected it to be loud because that's how cinemas were. And it didn't occur to me till many years later that I would come out of the cinema and I would have that overwhelm, almost headache.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is just what I think I just consider that part of the cinema experience. I wanted to see the film. I would go and see it, and I would come out, right? And supermarkets.
Ooh,
Never liked supermarkets. The
see
light, the crowds, the
these
the the
odors.
the the everything. It was like a sensory overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, I don't know if you could call it a fest when it's not festive, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, yes, definitely. Um, Stimming, actually, always. I always
Mm-hmm.
rocked. I always jiggled
Right
my
foot.
legs. Yeah, jiggling now. Um, and apparently, I didn't even discover till later that nail biting was stimming.
Really?
Yes, I discovered that in the last couple of years.
Oh my
Right, which explains why I've never been able to fully stop it.
God. Right?
Right,
Because I guess
you
it's like
know.
a comfort mechanism for you,
Oh,
you know?
it's something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Deep,
yeah.
deep interests. As we know, I'm the person that will always give you an extended answer to any question,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Yes, you too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes,
Way too long. And
right?
the
And
thing is also, I occasionally I catch myself in the middle of waffling on,
yeah,
but it's already started to happen, and I find it very hard to pull it back.
yes, yes.
Like I haven't
And
quite mastered that.
and social expectations. Now, what I want to say about this, and this comes with being high masking. There
Mm,
are certain things that we were brought up to do as part of operating in society, and we did them no matter how we felt about them,
right.
right?
Yep.
But I know that there have been situations where I will enter a conversation and realize that I've misread some little bit of it,
Oh my gosh.
right? Right?
Yes.
No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often, but I get thinking back. There are lots of times when I would be kind of subtly bewildered by something that had gone on,
Right.
right? Yes,
And then
yes,
you spent so much time, sort of like chewing your cud about this situation, like just going over and over it. What did I miss? What happened? I feel like something is off, but nobody said anything. Or what often has happened, sometimes still happens with me, is I will say something thinking it's perfectly normal, and then people react,
yeah,
in a way
in
that
a weird way.
I'm at least aware enough to know, okay, based on their reaction, what I said clearly was not the right thing to say.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I also spend a lot of time rehearsing. I practice what is to be said in what situation, or in what
yes. But
context.
I just thought that was normal preparation.
Right?
I thought everybody did that.
I didn't know that you
And,
were just out here winging it at life.
then of course there's certain feelings that come with understanding yourself in that way. I mean, for me, definitely relief,
Mm-hmm.
validation. It helps to know that you're not the weird one, that there's actually a name for this thing and
Yeah.
there's behavior that goes with it, right? um, compassion, and also reframing the past. So that is a constant thing. What about for you? What emotions were top of mind for you?
Um, Again, when I read that post that one day a few years back, I
Mm.
literally started to cry, and it was I think a combination of relief and validation, and also the ability to stop judging myself so harshly, because I so often felt like I was quote unquote wrong in some way,
Oh,
because the way that I
yes.
showed up or behaved or expressed myself or expressed emotion was incorrect or unacceptable. And so when I read that post, I'm like, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a good human being. I just happen to have autism. And
And
this is why I am the way I am, and it's okay.
and I think I felt the same way about the introversion piece as
Hmm.
well. It was a similar sort of journey, right? Um, yeah, it was a similar sort of journey for sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Just
yeah,
just
yeah,
a,
yeah.
a lot of some grief as well,
Hmm.
some grief, some reframing of the past, but definitely relief, validation, and increase in self-love, which is so important, you know.
Absolutely.
And so we touched on this a little bit a few minutes ago about our different journeys in terms of discovering we were autistic, that we are autistic. And
Hmm.
so I was self-diagnosed, and then eventually was formally diagnosed. It's important to mention I live in the United States and you live in Barbados. I
Yes,
mentioned this here.
that is actually a very important. That
It's
is
a
very important.
very important nuance. But you have chosen not to pursue a formal diagnosis. So can you explain, why
Absolutely.
you chosen not to? Hmm.
I think that if I were living in the US or the UK, where having the formal diagnosis made a difference to my ability to access necessary accommodations, I might have chosen to pursue it. But I
Hmm.
live in Barbados and I work for myself, you know, and so, and also I did a little bit of research and I looked at what appeared to be the prevailing narrative, and I think they were still dealing with the little white boys in terms of how they characterize autism. I
Hmm.
couldn't find anyone who was talking about it in adults, and I thought, and I'm not saying those people don't exist because there are professionals of every
Yes,
caliber in Barbados. I'm saying I could not easily find
find
those
them.
people.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, does this even make any sense? It is more important for me from a self knowledge and self awareness, and also from providing for myself what I need,
Hmm.
right? And so what I set out to do was I started learning from other autistic people. I particularly looked for stuff written about the Black autistic experience, of which there was not a lot. I have a book called Black and Autistic on my virtual shelf, which I'm planning to read soon,
Right.
right? So I was a journalist. I like a rabbit hole,
Research,
right?
research is your
And,
thing.
and so I went down some rabbit holes about autism. I found I had friends that I knew were autistic. I asked them to share resources.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's a personal choice. I think in my impression, having talked to many people who have pursued a formal diagnosis, is that sometimes that pursuit itself can be traumatic. And
Yes.
so and so I think people have to know whether they're in the right kind of mental and emotional space to
Hmm.
do that, or whether it is something that is required because they live in a particular locality and
Right.
they need to have the piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very, yes, it's very, very important for people to do what is right for them
For
there,
them.
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
it's a matter of it's a matter of context, a matter of location, and let's also mention it is a matter of budget. Let's not
yes,
let's not
yes,
tiptoe around that,
money.
because it costs money, real enough money, as we would say in Barbados. It is really, for most people, it is quite expensive. Even in some cases, if the testing is covered by insurance, it can still be expensive. That's number one. Number two is back to your point about many of the criteria being based on teen-aged white boys.
Yes.
Right? People who not only look like you and me, but who are now of an age like what we are, right? At this stage of life, nobody's looking at us thinking, oh,
No.
there goes a prototypical autistic person. Nobody, even though we are both autistic. And so
there's the gender bias, there's the racial bias, the underdiagnosis of Black women, right? So yes, I mean, absolutely. There's all of that to be taken into account when you're considering whether to pursue a diagnosis, a formal diagnosis.
Part of it
self-diagnosis is valid.
It is.
Right? Let me say that.
I was self-diagnosed for a couple of years before I sought out, and I was comfortable with that. Before I was going through some other things, and that led me to seek out a formal diagnosis. But yeah, I was comfortable. Because I knew, when I did my testing, I was like, okay, it's not a question of if, it's a question of how. How
exactly.
What level, quote unquote. So yeah, just do what works for you. And bear in mind that there are budgetary concerns involved as well, because that's something to take into consideration.
Right.
That gets access, and access is part of it.
And so of course, some of the people that most need to pursue this formally are maybe the people with the least financial means in order to do so.
So I have a question for you, sis. I have a question for you. So when you started doing all this research, going down all these rabbit holes and everything, right? Were there any traits that you recognized based on the descriptions, or others that you dismissed because they didn't fit any stereotypes that you knew about? Or
the deep focus, the rabbit holes, the special interests. Like, I have always been that person. I mean, you have known me all your life. I have always been that person. So have you. Right? And it's like, oh, this is why.
This is
why. Yeah.
And it's
fine.
It's okay. It's fine. It's perfectly normal. And I'm using that phrase.
Normal, yes.
Right. I'm using that phrase deliberately.
It is normal if you. Yeah, it is normal if you are autistic.
For a neurodivergent brain, for if you're or
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, we have overrun a little bit, but I think we'd like to just talk a little bit about the fact that more adults than ever seem to be questioning whether they are neurodivergent or discovering it. Why do you think this is happening, sis?
I think one of the few good things that social media has done, and there are not many, one of the few good things to come out of social media has been access to knowledge, and having people, just regular people and professionals, right? People like Dr. Raquel Martin, and Dr. Joe is on our podcast, in our comments right now. Having both regular people and professionals just share in a way that is understandable, that is accessible, that is digestible and bite-sized. Hey, here's what might be going on. Here is my experience. I consistently watch all of the, if you're autistic, you might do blah, 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 blah. and every time it's like, check. Helps build self-understanding. But I think it's because social media is so it's accessible, it is global. And so it's not only a few people speaking about it, let's say in Barbados. It is
Hmm.
the world who,
Yes.
part of the world and the population, part of the world's population that is concerned with this, all speaking about it pretty much at the same time. And so it seems like if all of a sudden there are more neurodivergent people. No, they're not. They're not more, but there's more information, there's more knowledge, there's more access. And because of that, we're getting better at recognizing people, right?
Yes.
Back in the day, let us be honest, I can actually look back and think about people that I went to school with now and be like, oh,
Yes. Yes.
poor child.
Yes.
I hope you found out because you are 1,000% autistic, but we didn't know back then. So
We didn't.
it is also being able to look back or look in your circle currently and recognize people who were just
And
always there, but you just didn't know. Yeah.
I think it's also that has led to us having more conversations. So now it is more likely that people will understand better what autism looks like in women or in Black women. There are more people plumbing their emotional depths than ever before, revisiting childhood experiences and putting things into context, right? I think, you know, and, the awareness leads to more investigation, more research, um, and people are looking for those explanations so that, now you're having Black adults, for example, saying, oh, now I
Hmm.
recognize this. You're having people being proactive about finding out what is going on with their kids, for
Yes,
example,
yes,
right?
yes, yes. And
You
what
know?
often happens is someone will discover, a parent, or will
Hmm.
have some insight into, okay, maybe there's something about my child. I want to go
Yeah.
get my child or my children checked out, right? Both children end up being, having autism, being ADHD as well. And then the parent says, huh. And then the parent
Yes.
goes, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then the parent
I've
goes and
known that
gets,
happening a few times. Yes,
right, goes and gets
for sure.
diagnosed. And then, it sort of starts a chain. It can start a chain in a
So,
family, right?
do you
Because
think,
it comes
sis,
down as genetic.
that, yes, do you think that there is less stigma about the diagnosis than there used to be? Because when you think about how autism used to be presented in those teenage white boys,
Mhm.
there was definitely appeared to be a stigma in how it was framed,
Yes.
right? And it is definitely something that I've heard people use as an insult, even though that is totally wrong, right?
Yeah, 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 totally. I
And
think,
so,
yeah, there is a
yeah,
difference. There is a difference. There is still stigma, but
yes.
there is less stigma.
Mhm.
So that's what, yeah, I think there's still stigma, but there's less stigma because, people, especially people who look like us, girl, nobody believes in the autistic Black girl. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody believes that she exists. You understand what I mean, though, right? And
Yeah.
so people are much more inclined to think, oh, especially a Black woman who is autistic, people are much more ready to assign any other reason to what they perceive to be quote unquote deficits or behavioral
Yes.
differences or whatever, other than, oh, autism, which they
So
might
as usual, you have to work twice or three times as hard,
yes, yes,
but that often happens when you're living in this skin and with this identity,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So so people are much more inclined to think, oh, this Black woman, has a bad attitude, or she works, slower than
Yeah.
other people, or she's not a team player, whatever it happens to be.
Yes.
Um,
While you're busy there, recognizing patterns and drawing threads together and not getting the credit for it. But hey,
yeah,
that might
but
be
hey,
another story.
we ain't better.
Anyway, folks, we appreciate you bearing with us. This is a huge topic, and obviously we have not
Yes.
we're going to return to it in season 2 because we want to discuss myths, misconceptions, and the overlap between introversion and autism, again, from our perspective, right? But before we do, just as a teaser to that next episode, which will be season 2 later in the year, let's just talk about one area of overlap for each of us. And
Mm.
I want to mention social fatigue, which I often feel as an introvert, which also applies to autism.
Yeah.
That point where you like you just can't be in a space anymore,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You know.
Same.
And
Same.
also, can I just say that I can stand in a doorway and recognize whether it's a space I need to be in?
Really? You just
Right.
do that
Okay.
quick scan.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do that quick scan. And let me tell you, there have been times I literally have done that, stood in the doorway, done the scan, and walked right back out.
Absolutely.
Because nope, I'm not
Absolutely.
doing this to myself today.
Right. And so what is your area of overlap? Your one area that you're going to have.
Mine would be sensory overwhelm, because I feel everything. Like I said earlier, I hear electricity. I just it could be the tiniest sound. And then also I hear everything and I have tinnitus, which is an unholy combination. I cannot even describe. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sensitive to light, which is why, I mean, I'm not wearing really dark shades today, but I normally wear really dark sunglasses. And so, but that is a combination of, that's where the two of them overlap, the introversion and autism overlap for me. Just
Yeah.
being overwhelmed by all of the input and all of the stimuli and needing to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. So let us move smartly to our closing section.
Yeah.
Quiet minds, loud opinions. Um, what is a loud opinion that you have about introversion, autism, and neurodivergences?
My loud opinion is that all of those, I don't even want to use the word labels, but all of those descriptions, all of those experiences, all of those differences make me who I am and make me special and magical and beautiful and also in need of support, despite how I might present or appear. Please, I'm begging y'all, please support your girl and support people like us who are autistic, but might not necessarily quote unquote look autistic, which is not a thing, by the way. There's no such
Which is
thing.
not a thing.
That's another thing.
It's not a thing.
We'll deal with that when we come back to
we'll,
season two.
we'll
But
deal with that next time. So,
yeah.
yes, I want to say that different is not deficient. That it
Mm,
is important for us to understand ourselves so that we can give ourselves the appropriate care and ask for the appropriate accommodations.
yes.
And that everyone deserves to thrive.
Mm,
Frankly,
mhm.
everyone deserves to thrive.
Yes.
So,
I love that. I love
closing reflections. Closing reflections, and thanks to all of you who have borne with us for this extended episode. Thanks to the folks who will be catching us on Team Replay. What do you
that.
want to? What's your closing reflections, sis?
So one, my closing reflection is I have, because of this knowledge I have of myself now, I have moved away from asking what is wrong with me, which I used to ask almost constantly, to now asking, oh, what do I need? Where can I be support? Where can I either support myself, or where can someone, frankly, someone support me? Where and how can I get help,
Mhm.
at this time? So moving away from something is wrong with me to I am, made perfectly in the image of God or whatever, right? But in this particular case, I need support. What about you? What's your closing reflection?
Yes, for me, it's that whether you are introverted, autistic, neurodivergent, highly sensitive, none of those things, or all of those things, you deserve compassion and understanding and the
Mm,
freedom to be fully yourself and to
Mhm.
have your needs met in the way that is best for you.
Yes.
And with that, I
Sis.
want to thank you for joining us for this extended episode. Uh, there is much more to say about this topic. We will be back with it in season 2, and we will see you next time.
See
Thank
you
you for
next
being here.
time. Bye.
Bye.